I'm Maddie Smith. Does the media negatively influence youth to commit heinous crimes by glorifying criminals? I think that the media does contribute a lot to the violence of teenagers and young adults and even children. I think all types of media, like the news, social media, video games, books, TV shows, and movies all contribute to a violent tendency that some teenagers or young adults may have. Like I said, video games and social media, they are a big influence on the behavior of teenagers and children and young adults because our brains, we absorb negative things more than we do positive things. It's just how our brain works. We just absorb that negative energy or negative story quicker and more easily than we do positive things. So there's just a lot of contributing factors to violent behavior and aggression among teenagers and young adults. And it's not all media. A lot of the times it's depression or anxiety or stress from school or stress from a sport, or you're just tired. Or even if a teenager or a child, if they're just emotional. Teenagers are really emotional. Everyone knows that. There's just a lot going on. And it's just hard to channel that energy, especially aggression, into something positive. And our brains are not fully developed until about our mid-20s. So it's really hard to just channel everything into something positive and effective rather than into something negative, because it's just easier to teenagers to do something negative and channel our aggression into something negative. It's just a natural tendency. It's just easier for us. One form of media that is really harmful to teenagers and young adults is shows like Criminal Minds and Dahmer Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story that's new to Netflix. It's been out for a couple months, I think. And then like the Ted Bundy movie starring Zac Efron. While those might be really good shows and a lot of people really like those shows, they're harmful because they, in a way, it makes teenagers and young adults, especially women, romanticize those serial killers instead of realizing who they are and what acts they've committed, especially with the new Dahmer series. Even Evan Peters, who played Jeffrey Dahmer in the series, said that that show was supposed to be the point of view of Jeffrey Dahmer's victims, but instead a lot of people on social media were making edits and posts and all this stuff that just made Dahmer seem mysterious, and it wasn't the actor that they were romanticizing, it was the serial killer himself. And a lot of women said that they weren't scared of Jeffrey Dahmer and they were attracted to him because they weren't his type. They wouldn't be his victims, which is honestly really frightening and really creepy that our minds can go that way. But a psychologist said that he has found that fear and empathy is linked in our brain somehow. So whenever we are frightened of something, we try to humanize it to make it seem less scary so we have more empathy. So when we watch these shows and we see like the flashbacks of Jeffrey Dahmer's childhood or Ted Bundy's childhood, we feel bad. Because it's like bringing a human side to this monster. So we're like, oh, I feel bad for him. And people start romanticizing and empathizing these serial killers. And there was another psychologist that did a study of copycat criminals. And 22% of the 574 prisoners that she surveyed said that their crimes were copycat crimes. And basically, a copycat crime is when there's this huge crime and someone sees it in the media, like on the news or something, and they're like, hey, that person is getting a lot of glory and fame from the crime that they committed instead of the consequences. And somewhere in their mind, they're like, I want fame from that too. That's easy. And even there was an award-winning journalist and author named John Pariento, and he wrote about the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting and how there was, a month later, there was another shooting about 4,000 miles away from that location in a high school in Taft, California. And it was a 16-year-old boy that went into that high school and shot a classmate. And this was when there was 24/7 media coverage of the Sandy Hook shooting. And he just happened to wonder, was the media coverage an influence on that 16-year-old committing that crime and shooting somebody? So the media, it's not the only thing to blame, but it's definitely a big contributor to the violent acts that are committed, especially now. And it's really sad because I will hear something where there's like a really sad story in the news, whether it's a shooting or a car wreck or something, and we're used to that now. And I just feel like I'm desensitized because it's like, yeah, what's new? And I feel horrible, but it's like you can't get emotional over everything because you will be sad and depressed constantly. And that's just what the media does. It just makes you depressed because there's all these horrible and sad stories constantly in the news. So I just think that if parents could maybe control what their kids are watching, it's impossible to control every little thing, but also teenagers could try to find things to channel their aggression, like sports or art or anything where they can just channel their aggression and get off their phone and just surround themselves with more positive things. I think that would make such a big difference. And there's no way the media is going to change because it's all about money and sad stories, and that's how people are going to keep watching the show, or they're going to keep watching the news. So it's really sad that this is what's entertaining or what people are going to watch, but it's really about money with movies and TV shows. It's like the darker the better, because people just are intrigued by that. There's something in our minds are intrigued by that. And I just think if we surround ourselves with more positive things, especially teenagers and young adults and children, we could prevent a lot of violence and aggression.